911. Anyhow, vacated to 21779 9457.
Hey, welcome back, Original Gangsters. Officer Greg out here with you in the woods of northern Idaho. This happens to be the site where Mrs. OG and I are going to be building the future OG's Danger Compound. We're on vacation right now, so we're not back at the homestead in California, but we're up here doing a little bit of yard work, just cleaning up. We've got a few acres here, and we are doing some limbing of the trees to make the place a little more fire safe come this summer. Speaking of which, I built a campfire down here to keep warm. It's a freezing cold day out here. It's overcast, and just as I got everything set up out here to film this, it started to rain. However, before it turns into a downpour, I wanted to share my thoughts on a topic here that I won't say I'm uniquely qualified to talk about, but I am a little bit trained in this area, and I'd like to share some thoughts about school shootings, or what we call mass shootings, since they don't just happen in schools. I'm filming this on June 15th, 2022. It's been a few weeks, several weeks, since the shooting at the Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. Everybody's already heard about that. I'm absolutely positive you know all about this. Problem is, you've been hearing a lot of idiots on the news and a lot of idiots on podcasts and even some on YouTube talking about what they would do to prevent these things, what we can do to prevent these things, and what causes these things. That's actually kind of the key to this whole thing. Well, here's another idiot. I'm going to share with you some of my perspectives on this. Law of the campfire: wherever you sit, the smoke is going to go. A minute ago, it was headed over there, so I moved over here. So I thought one of the first things I would do is share with you some of my experience, some of the credentials that maybe allow me to speak on this topic. And I thought it might be interesting to sit down and speak with you guys out here for a minute about my thoughts. I don't necessarily have any magic button that's going to shut this all off, but maybe we can address some of the topics coming from a trained law enforcement professional who has dealt with this kind of thing. Okay, my name's Officer Greg. You know me from the Tailflater Mouse channel, and of course from right here on OG's Danger Show. If you haven't already subscribed to OG's Danger Show, take a second, reach down there and hit the subscribe button, and go ahead and give it a thumbs up while you're down there tapping away. So I'm an active duty law enforcement officer with almost 23 years of experience on the job, on the road this entire time. I have not ever taken an office job or a desk job, any special duty positions, even though those have been offered to me. I like working the road, and my ancillary duties are a little more practical related. I'm a full-time range master. Now that doesn't mean I work on the range every single day. A couple of days of the month we get called out to run the range for our agency. So I train other police officers on our duty pistol, our rifles, and our shotguns. In addition to that, I recently resigned my commission in the special response team. I was a grenadier. It was taking a lot of time away from home, especially last summer when all the kooks were popping off, and I just didn't want to be away from home as much anymore. And I'm getting older. That's kind of a younger man's game, all that hutting around and looking for bad guys. So I thought if I was going to ever go into a emergency response mode, I'd rather be right there in my hometown protecting my family and friends rather than posted away in some far city dealing with a bunch of clowns. Back in 2012, I was asked to join a law enforcement active shooter emergency response team, a laser team they call it, because it's got to have a cool acronym. This was a team that was put together by my department in cooperation with the Department of Homeland Security. Department of Homeland Security about that time decided to train up as many law enforcement officers across the nation so that we were all on the same page when it came to responding to an active shooter situation. We all know that clear back in the 90s, before Columbine, an active shooter situation in a school, while rare, they did happen, and police response was to post up outside that school. After Columbine, they decided the model needed to change. Active shooter response needed to be police officers, as little as one police officer if necessary, getting together with officers from other agencies and getting in there and addressing that attacker as fast as possible. Studies showed that as soon as that attacker, any school shooter, church shooter, as soon as they were engaged or otherwise distracted, they stopped killing innocent people. So if they heard sirens racing up on them, if they heard people breaching the door to that school and coming down the hallway, they immediately turned their attention to the cops, which is what we want, and they stopped shooting innocent people. That's also what we want. So active shooter response became a thing, and I was tasked with joining this team we traveled around the state and we trained up other agencies on active shooter response, how we're going to get together as a multi-agency team if need be and get into these schools, churches, businesses, whatever it was, and get in there and take care of these little cowardly assholes that decided they were going to take out their grievances on other people. Now, many of you in the big cities probably don't know, but out in the countryside, my agency might be backed up with the county sheriff, who might be 20 miles away, a local police officer who might be completely on his own, and might be another guy from my agency. But we're very unlikely to have a perfect team. I got a deer running through my property, and I got a rifle in my hands. But law enforcement out there, outside of the cities, is spread pretty thin. Inside the cities is spread pretty thin. But we are very unlikely to respond to something like an active shooter event as a coordinated team that's specially trained and happen to be all from the same agency with the exact same training. So the Department of Homeland Security wanted us to get together and unify that training so that if I was running to the sound of a active shooter at a school and a local county sheriff was also responding to that and a local police officer, the three of us from three different agencies were similarly trained, and that we could all gang up together, bust through those doors, and get in there and take care of that son of a bitch. This video is going to contain some frank talk. I feel very passionately about this topic, and I'm going to talk freely and use the language that I would commonly use. This offends some of you. Some of you have written me before in the comment section and said, well, there's no use for words like that. Actually, there is use for words like that, and it's part of our language. And when I feel passionately about a topic like this, I might be using some coarse language that might not agree with you. So if you have sensitive ears and language is going to bother you, I'm going to try and bleep out everything that I can catch, but I'm going to speak freely on this camera, and if I don't catch everything, I apologize for that. Sorry, not sorry.
Well, I have a microphone, and you don't. So you will listen to every damn word I have to say!
You may want to go ahead and put in a Justin Bieber CD, listen to that for a while, and then as soon as we're done, you can come back and join us over here on the Danger Show. So I'm prepping for another video on the Daniel Defense DD M4V7. You haven't seen this rifle much on my show. This is my personal home defense rifle, kind of my primary rifle. I wanted to bring it out here with me today and get it on camera, get some B-roll for the video, but also I thought it was an appropriate rifle to have with me because the spineless little coward that shot up the school in Uvalde, Texas, happened to be using a Daniel Defense rifle. A $2,200 rifle for a kid who was unemployed. I'm not 100% sure if it was the DD-M4V7, but this is their flagship rifle, and there's a very good chance it was this very rifle. Now, Daniel Defense has been catching some shit over the fact that they make a rifle. Of course, we're trying to sue gun companies for the wrongful use of firearms when they're used by spineless cowards who have a grudge against the world. They misuse these lawful, legal products that I have purchased, and they go about doing evil. And now we're trying to sue those companies and put them out of business. How much sense does that make? My Daniel Defense rifle hasn't hurt anybody since I purchased it. I've been watching it very closely, and it has not shot anybody. It hasn't blown any lungs out, and it hasn't got up off the table or jumped out of the case and somehow hurt anyone. So those of us who have lawfully purchased a firearm like this, they're trying to take these things away from us and sue the company out of business because one spineless, cowardly asshole used this very rifle to go after a schoolyard full of children. Absolutely crap, and we'll talk about that shortly. So since this Uvalde shooting happened, I've been driving around in my patrol car taking some notes. I've been listening to a lot of agency spokesholes. I've been listening to a lot of politicians and government spokesholes, as well as a lot of pretty talking heads on the news, and that comes from both sides of the news. I believe that if you're not listening to both sides of the news, that to get the other side's perspective on world events, that you're missing out. So if you're a guy who only watches Fox News, you're not getting the rest of the story, even though we might not agree with what's over on MSNBC. But if you're only listening to MSNBC, you're certainly not getting the rest of the story over there. And those of you who think CNN's nice right in the middle, a nice little airport lounge news station, boy, you are sadly misled. I will say, however, they've been given some pretty dang good coverage on this Uvalde shooting and staying pretty unbiased on a lot of this. So while I've been driving around, I've been taking some notes. What I think we could do to, first of all, address what causes an active shooter, and then to address what possibly we can do to help stop it. Included in this video, I'd like to talk a little bit about what police officers are going to do. I'd like to talk a little bit about what teachers and school administrators can do to help stop this, and then of course what politicians and news media can do to help slow this storm of what we think is active shooters happening all over the United States. Now, the advent of mass killers in the United States or anywhere in the world is not a new thing. It seems to be rearing its ugly head lately because we have 24-hour news that's covering these events as they come out. And I noticed that even Fox News the other day is calling every single shooting event that involves 3 or more people a mass shooting, a mass killing. And I absolutely disagree with that. We've had crime, we've had street shootings, shootings at parties, things like that for years. We've had disgruntled people come into work and shoot 1 or 2 coworkers for years and years and years, as long as there's been firearms and disgruntled coworkers. But calling everything a mass shooting or an active shooter situation is just a buzzword to get you to click on some news story. It's not exactly accurate, even though it fits the definition, but it's not what we think of as a mass killing of a cowardly asshole like in Uvalde walking into a school and shooting a bunch of innocent children. So we need to be able to separate those two things first. One thing people might not know, but the most deadly mass killing in the United States happened in Michigan in 1926. A psychotic asshole who had a grudge against the government went into a school, planted a bunch of bombs, and ended up killing over 100 people. I don't have the exact figures with me, but he ended up killing over 100 people. As people fled the burning, exploded school, he then shot them down with a lever-action rifle from his Model A or Model T car. I don't even remember. Don't tell me that mass shootings are a brand spanking new thing that we need to address, and oh my God, where did this phenomenon come from? Okay, I'm going to start with the touchy topic first. What police are going to do in a mass killing situation. I don't like the term active shooter because I'm an active shooter. I go out and shoot all the time. So we're going to call them active killers or mass killers or something like that instead. So this is a touchy topic because recently there's been some criticism of the Uvalde Police Department and the school district's police department for the response at the Robb Elementary School shooting. I'm not going to comment too much on that because the jury is still out. We don't know for a fact yet that they all stuck outside the school like a bunch of cowards and didn't go in. If we find that out, I absolutely join you in calling for them, every single one of them, to resign, be fired, whatever it takes. If you know that a shooter is inside killing kids in a school, your ass should be in there. I don't care if you know it's your last day, your ass should be in there. You should have a rifle with you, and you should be engaging that son of a bitch and putting some rounds in his face. I don't care if I'm going to take rounds in my vest. I'm going in there, and I'm going to do what I can to divert his attention to me and get him to stop killing innocent kids. Now, we don't know yet. There's studies going on. The DOJ's in there studying the whole case. I'm kind of 2 minds on this. First of all, if you have a barricaded subject, if a person goes into a school and barricades themselves and they have a rifle and you don't know yet that he's killed a bunch of people, you can almost see why a police chief, this is how we're trained, a police chief is going to put his people on a perimeter, and we're going to watch that school. We're going to set up around that school and try to get in there to negotiate with a barricaded individual. Completely different than an active shooter. If we believe a guy has gone into a school and he's actively pulling the trigger and killing innocent people, adults or children, we're going into that school and we're shooting that son of a bitch in the face. In this situation, there is a possibility, we don't know yet, there's a possibility that this police chief and all these officers believe they had a barricaded subject, and the last thing you want to do with a barricaded subject is to charge in there and get him to take hostages or just get desperate, you know, a rat trapped in a corner, and him start shooting kids at that time. Now, there are mixed reports coming out about whether or not he had already shot at officers inside, where the officers were inside, did they engage him, were they being engaged inside and couldn't advance any further, were there already kids that had been shot. We have phone calls from 911 from the children that were inside the classroom saying that he's killing people, but we don't know the timeline on all that, so I'm going to refrain from some of that, but I will say, I'm not defending cops. If we find out that they did not go in while they knew kids were being killed, they should absolutely be fired and kicked off that job. They are not police officers. They're not the kind of people that we want protecting the kids in our schools. Now, a typical active shooter response team, the way I was trained, the way I trained other people, we're going to get together with any law enforcement agency that joins us out there in front of that school. We're going to use a school in this scenario because the Robb Elementary School happens to be the most recent example we have. We're going to get together with any agency that shows up. If a county sheriff shows up, even if he's not the same trained as I am, He and I are going in there with our goddamn rifles, and we're going to engage that son of a bitch. We're not going to wait around. I don't even care if the county sheriff isn't there. If I'm the only responder, we have been authorized, we've been trained to go into that situation, do what we can to preserve our own lives, but we're going to go into that situation and we're going to stop that guy. One of the things that really stuck with me while we were being trained, they showed us a videotape of a newscaster standing outside the Virginia Tech building on the Virginia Tech campus when that Asian shooter was going through and killing people with pistols. Behind the newscaster, you could hear gunshots going off inside the school. Every single time one of those gunshots went off, there was a counter at the bottom of the screen, a little digital counter that had been superimposed in post-production. Every single time one of those gunshots was heard behind that newscaster, another person was dying. Every single time you heard a bang, someone new was dying. He lined all those people up and he executed them right there, kneeling down on the floor of their classroom. He shot many people right through their hands because they put their hands up in a defensive measure, shot them right through their hands into their heads. Every single time a gunshot went off, someone died. So we're not going to go to a school and listen to gunshots inside of a school and stand outside like a bunch of lumps. We're going to go in there and we're going to distract that guy. If we can't get rounds on him, we're at least going to make some noise and put some rounds near him so that we can get him focusing his attention on us. The minute he's focused his attention on police or any other kind of responder, he's not killing innocent people. And that's what we want. Stop him killing innocent people. I'll say another thing too that's a little controversial. Police officers who are going into a school might encounter injured people, might encounter dead people, might encounter little kids that have been killed or are injured. We know they're bleeding out and they might very well not make it. We don't have the luxury at this time, if there are rounds going off somewhere else in that school, we don't have the luxury of stopping to administer medical care. In the scenario where myself and another deputy from a different agency are coming into a school to engage that son of a bitch, any minute we stop to administer care, more gunfire is happening and more people are being hit. So it's tragic. It's absolutely horrifying. I really feel for anyone who's ever put in that position, the psychological toll that's going to take on them. But stepping over dead or injured children to go after that cowardly son of a bitch, it's going to be tough, but it's a necessary duty that we have to do to stop that gunfire, stop innocent people being killed. Just sat down in a different place and now the smoke's moving towards me. So in 2012, the U.S. Secret Service, this was after the Columbine shooting, everybody governmentally, federally, got really serious about addressing the active shooter thing. And the Secret Service in 2012 started compiling records and doing studies on active shooters, who they were, profiling them, where they came from, what was causing them to go completely psycho all of a sudden and shoot somebody. And remember, it wasn't all of a sudden. It's just that we started really paying attention to them more. There was a slight uptick in the number of active shooters about that time, but they've been around forever. Active killers have been around forever. It doesn't always have to be with firearms, sometimes with knives, swords, rocks. We've even seen active killers in very restrictive countries like France walk around with assault rifles that they, of course, were not supposed to have and murder innocent people. Those people didn't have the ability, like we do with our Second Amendment, to protect ourselves. So we'll get into an argument with our foreign viewers a different time about all the firearms in the United States and how they think that the proliferation of firearms that are in our country are what's causing this. I beg to differ, and I'll give you some stats on that in a little bit. So the first thing, active killers, who are they? We typically, when we study these things, we find out they're typically white males, usually very young, very immature white males, who have some kind of a grudge against someone. They tend to be loners. They tend to be without a girlfriend or any social circle. If they do have a social circle, it usually is comprised of some other cowardly, psychotic assholes who just give them support for the crazy ideas that they have about doing violence against innocent people. One of the things they have in common, and one of the things we really need to address, is every single one of them that we can document has been without any kind of a father figure or a strong male role model in their lives. Pick any one of these guys. Even if they had a father nearby, they were not an actual father figure to these guys. They were almost always raised by a mother, a grandmother, or even the system. Now, they're psychotic. They're strange rangers who are out there. They don't have any social circle. They don't have any friends to kind of rein them in. Their social circle usually consists of the internet, since the advent of the internet. And they get on these forums and they start talking about their crazy ideas with like-minded individuals. Well, when you're talking about crazy ideas like, hey, I think I'm going to go shoot up a school, and you're on some kind of a weird chat room or forum with a bunch of other psychotic, cowardly assholes, all you're going to hear is support for your crazy idea. So these guys get on there, we have found in studies, and they get on there and start talking about their crazy ideas, and they're egged on and they're pushed towards it by other people. Now, these other people might not necessarily want school shootings to happen, but these other people are anonymous, just like our school shooter when he gets online. They're anonymous too, and they just want to see something happen. They're willing to push anybody. How many times have we all seen on the internet where some little girl will be dancing or doing some kind of recital, and you get just strange assholes on the internet saying, you should die, go kill yourself. I mean, there are some really f***ed up people out there on this planet, and the internet has brought them all into one spot where we can all check in on them from time to time. Our active killers, however, are getting their support from these sites, from these people. A lot of times they're trying to impress females. A lot of times they're trying to impress other people. And more often than not, they're just angry, cowardly assholes who want to share their miserable lives with everybody else. They don't believe that everybody else should be happy, even if it's a little kid. Can you imagine how psychotic you'd have to be angry at the world, angry at your parents, angry at your job, or your teachers, the girl that wouldn't go out with you? How psychotic do you have to be to say, well, I'm going to go take out this anger on innocent people? And I don't care if that's adults, but little kids, are you fucking serious? Another thing that the Secret Service studies have shown us is that these active killers always alert or tell someone what's going to happen ahead of time. We find out that they've always posted something online. They've always hinted to a family member. Now, they're psychotic, so a lot of people don't take them seriously. And there's a lot of talk right now about keeping crazy people from owning guns. And let me say, I'm all for that. We'll get to that topic in just a second. But they always alert people to how crazy they are and to some of their intentions. The Robb Elementary School shooter mentioned that he was going to shoot his grandmother and then shoot up a school. I don't remember the exact words, but those are essentially what he said he was going to do. Now, whether we're on a forum somewhere where we can stop that person, where we can alert authorities and get to that person, that's not always possible. You've seen recently there's been a couple of copycat shooters. There's almost always copycat shooters in these kind of scenarios. We've seen a lot of copycat shooters that have been stopped because they posted things online, they passed a note in class, whatever it took, and they were caught. Somebody reported them, thank God, before they were able to get in there and do similar damage. So being alert, and we don't want to get into a situation where our society becomes a snitch on everybody kind of situation, but being alert and finding these crazy f***ers before they can get out there and carry out their plans against innocent kids, we've got to find those people, we've got to take them seriously, and we've got to report them and stop them. We need to intervene with mental health authorities or law enforcement to stop these people before they can get their hands on weapons and do this damage. We always find out too with these active killers, when we study them, we profile them, that stressors in their lives are what kind of drive them to this activity. This can be stressors from family. It's usually stressors from family. It's often stressors from school, from bosses, from girlfriends or a lack of a girlfriend. And these people take out their anger on the world on innocent people, innocent kids or innocent churchgoers or people at a business, if in fact they had problems with a boss or coworkers at a business. We find out usually that they have made some kind of a post or some kind of I won't call it a cry for help, but they've made some kind of a post, some kind of a warning within 6 months of their activity when they set out to do their damage. Whether they were caught or not, they made some kind of a hint and alerted people to what could have happened usually within 6 months of their criminal event. These active shooters, it doesn't matter what race they come from, it doesn't matter what age or socioeconomic background. They always are upset, they feel rejected, and they want to take out that anger on other people. It's my belief that we're raising our kids to be mentally ill these days. We're teaching them in our schools, we're teaching them even sometimes at home, that every little tiny aggression, every little thing that somebody says against them is a major deal. We even have a word for it. It's called a microaggression. Can you believe that? A tiny little thing that you are trained to be offended at. So we've now raised a generation of kids that are trained to be offended and upset at every single little thing that comes by. This is, I think, why we're seeing more of these things happen than we did in the past. And I don't want to sound like a FUD, but when I was growing up and you got upset at something, first of all, you got upset at major things that happened to you. Your dad beating you with a stick or or a kid at school punching you in the face, those were macroaggressions, not really microaggressions. But when we got upset, we had different ways of dealing with them. And maybe we internalized it. Maybe that's not healthy. But let me tell you what's not healthy. Going out there and injuring or hurting a bunch of innocent people because you feel offended at some tiny little slight that's happened in your life. Well, although the setup is a little hokey, I put this steel plate in a vest carrier, a rifle plate carrier, hanging from the front of our bad guy with a toe strap. So at least we got something steel to shoot against for a couple of no-stop drills. And then as soon as we have not stopped our bad guy, where are we going to shoot? Right there. Sorry, Max. So for this reason, I believe that we're kind of raising this new generation to become mentally ill. We're programming them ahead of time with the thought that you should be offended every single time someone says something against you. And what I've seen a lot with my own kids going to college, you should be offended at something that someone says against someone else. You are third-party offended for them. Well, we need to get over that shit. Just because you're offended doesn't mean you're right. So what teachers and school administrators can do? You've probably seen a lot of theories out there about how to harden schools, how to make schools a little tougher to get into. This Robb Elementary School was actually a pretty well-defended or hardened school. They happened to have one unlocked door in the back that a teacher had thought she shut and locked, and it wasn't locked. That's the one weak entry point that this guy got into. I think after the Newtown shooting, most of our schools, I know the private school that my kids went to, they limited access to that school with a lot of fences, a lot of walls, down to just one entry point. And that one entry point, oftentimes in certain cities or jurisdictions, has to be, visitors have to be even buzzed through. That one entry point can be checked by school staff. Now, granted, a guy walks in that one entry point with a rifle and starts working his way through that school through that one entry point, you really haven't solved the problem. But maybe if we introduce security in schools or armed security in schools, maybe we could stop crazy fuckers like this from walking into a school through our one weak point in our armor and getting into the school and injuring those innocent kids. The topic of having armed security guards on campus is a tricky one. After the Newtown shooting, we started seeing a lot more school resource officers on campus. Okay, that's one uniformed police officer, sometimes on a gigantic campus. I know in my local area, the school resource officer, who's armed with a pistol, has to go outside into the parking lot and retrieve his rifle from his patrol car and come back into the school to engage any possible shooters. Now tell me how misguided that is. School administrators don't want evil things like rifles on their campus, but instead of a school resource officer having that in his office and having it locked up even out of sight in a locker, having that thing ready to go, he now has to run out to the patrol car and grab that thing out and come in and hopefully get to where that active shooter is. In the meantime, that 30 seconds, 1 minute that it's taken him to get out there, there's been countless other people shot and killed inside by this crazy, cowardly asshole. But armed security guards in schools, while it might seem like a horrible idea, we don't like to think of gating down our schools, building up walls, and putting armed security guards there. We might have to take the Israeli model and start putting armed teachers, armed security guards in place that can deal with these guys. It's kind of a cliche answer, but the only thing that can stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. If you have a locked door, a good guy with a gun is eventually going to get through that locked door if he wants to. And while we may slow him down and divert his attention somewhere else, or maybe stall him long enough where police can get to him, if he wants bad enough to get into a church or to a workplace or something to do harm to someone, he's going to get in there. So we need some armed people to get in there and start dealing with these assholes on their level, which happens to be violence against violence. Violence is the only thing that's going to stop violence. We don't like to think about armed people standing around our little kids here in American schools. It's something we've never had before. But places like Israel have been doing it for years. You know, teachers taking kids on field trips, carrying an AR-15 with them. They are people over there that are used to dealing with violent, cowardly assholes. And we're just now getting to that point. So it might be that we have to take off the blinders, and this might be the new reality for us. After the Newtown school shooting, we had a lot of retired military people, ex-military, retired police officers, even off-duty police officers that had volunteered to go and stand in front of schools armed to protect that school. We had school administrators all over the country that were very much opposed to that. They thought it looked bad. It was a bad image, first of all. They didn't like the idea of these unvetted, untrained people standing outside their schools with firearms ready to come inside at a moment's notice. So that's a tough one because we don't know exactly the level of training. We don't know the capabilities of the individual. If it's some grandfather who wants to stand outside with his 5-shot snubby revolver, or whether it's a military vet, is he some kind of a PTSD guy who's going to end up doing more damage inside when he does go in, or is he absolutely going to be able to get in there and engage that shooter in a very violent way? He has no bullet holes to the chest. It's unfortunate, but armed people and hardened schools are pretty much going to be part of our future, I think, now. And I think it's just going to be the new normal for kids. They're going to have to grow up with it. We grew up with the threat of a nuclear-armed Russia dropping nukes on our heads, and for some reason we thought climbing under our desks and doing a little drill underneath our desks was going to protect us from a intercontinental ballistic missile from the Soviet Union. So times change, and this is unfortunate, but I think this might be what we have to do to stop the possibility of some crazy, cowardly asshole coming into your school and injuring your kids. So this is going to take action from school administrators, school principals, and school board members are going to have to be more open to this. You know, they're going to have to realize that our new reality includes firearms on school campuses in the hands of good guys, whether that's teachers who are trained. I believe teachers absolutely should be able to carry firearms in classrooms to defend their kids, or have one in a lockbox that's far away from the access of the kids. People get freaked out about that. People, especially in education, get freaked out about there being a pistol in a locked box in a classroom. But there's so many other dangerous things in a school that we don't even think about. A locked away pistol that kids can't get any access to, I don't think people are thinking rationally when they automatically poo-poo that idea and say that we don't want armed teachers in our classrooms. Now, when it comes to firearms in classrooms and teachers having those guns and using them to protect kids, I absolutely believe that they should go through some basic level of training. Now, I'm a CCW instructor in Central California, and in that role, I have taught people from all walks of life: school teachers, farmers, ranchers, business people, all different types of people, about the defensive use of firearms, the use of deadly force within the laws of California and the United States, where they can and cannot go with their firearms. So I believe that if teachers are going to have firearms in the classroom, I believe they should have some basic level of training. Maybe not CCW training, maybe it's more specific to schools. However, they've got to have some basic level of training. It would surprise you at the level of competence, or I should say incompetence, of some of the people that come out to the CCW courses. They will crack open their brand spanking new Glock box and show me their brand spanking new Glock 19 with the price tag still on it. They've never shot it before. And a lot of our day is spent warming them up to just the basic use of that pistol, not to mention the concealed carry of that gun, and being able to deploy that against bad guys. Just basically holding it, getting sights on target, getting a magazine changed, loading the thing, how to clean the thing. Very, very basic stuff that you and I are probably very, very familiar with. Sometimes to them is kind of a new concept, and we spend a lot of time warming them up. So a teacher who has a Glock 19 locked away in a lockbox in their classroom, I believe, should go through some kind of training so that they're not more of a liability when they pull out that firearm and that some crazy, cowardly asshole is trying to kick in that door and come in and injure those the teacher and the kids that they're responsible for protecting. We put armed people in charge of protecting our country everywhere you look. You have police officers who are protecting our city streets. You have armed security guards inside banks protecting money and bank tellers. You have armed security guards in some malls and businesses protecting the commodities or the money, the cash flow that rolls through some businesses. You have armed people protecting politicians in Washington, D.C., and even in your state and local offices. You have armed people protecting our forest. Our forest rangers often are armed. Why are we so against armed people out there protecting the most valuable thing we have on this planet, and that is our kids? I don't get it. All of a sudden, when it comes to schools, we have to have a gun-free zone. There will be no firearms allowed and no armed security guards anywhere within the area. That is some misguided bullshit, and I think it's got to stop. It's got to change if we're going to protect these kids. That's my opinion. All right, if you've watched this show for any length of time, or even over on Talflater Mouse, you know that there's probably no more pro Second Amendment guy than this guy right here. Not radically so. I do believe in common sense, and I'm not talking about common sense gun laws, but I believe in common sense out there. I do believe that every single one of us in the United States are allowed to own and carry, without permits, firearms. Now, that's not the reality. I'm a CCW instructor. Even in my very conservative county in Central California, which is very easy to get a concealed carry permit, you still have to get a permit. You still have to get permission from the sheriff. I don't believe that's right, but it is the reality that we live under in a lot of the United States. We're getting more and more constitutional carry states in the United States, and I think that's a good thing. I think anybody who owns a firearm and knows what they're doing with that firearm through some very basic training should be able to carry that firearm around and protect themselves and protect others out there in the world, not just at home sitting on your couch. I think we can all agree that the Second Amendment, first of all, was designed for protection from a tyrannical government, right? That's enumerated right there in the Constitution. Second of all, it was put out there for the protection of the average citizen. Back then, you didn't have police forces out roaming around counties and stuff. The average citizen has to be able to protect themselves. And don't get my comment about police forces, don't misconstrue that. Just because we have police now, we all know the police are not going to be there in time. If at 2 o'clock in the morning someone's breaking in the back door of your home, doesn't matter if you live in the city or in the country, police are not going to be there in time to stop that guy. We all know that. That's been outlined in by the Supreme Court. So what we do instead is we have the Second Amendment that allows us to own firearms in our home and carry them out in the streets to protect ourselves from crazy, cowardly assholes. There were some active killers down in San Bernardino, California a few years ago who used AR-15 rifles. This is a very restrictive state. They were not allowed to have magazines over 10 rounds. Lo and behold, they had magazines over 10 rounds. So go figure. People who are about to commit crimes, up to and including murder, are not about to stop, slow down, and worry and think about laws like magazine capacity. So I don't understand these people who think that as long as we have more laws out there, we need more laws out there. Guess what? Criminals don't obey laws. And if we keep putting more laws out there, they're just going to disobey those laws as well. They're going to use high-capacity magazines while I'm stuck inside of a school with a low-capacity magazine. They're going to go into a gun-free zone with a gun. Oh my God. So we got to stop this absolute horseshit, this unicorn theory that putting more laws out there is somehow going to stop criminals. They don't give a shit about your laws. Let's stop making more laws. So going back to the active killers, we talked about how they have very little social interaction with people. We almost always find out that they're set off by family members or friends or something like this. I think that the internet and iPhones, and I don't want to sound like a FUD, I'm on my iPhone all friggin' day long, but I think that internet and iPhones have absolutely done damage to our kids as far as their relationships with other kids. Going down to the mall and hanging out with a bunch of other kids, or hanging out in the pool in the backyard of your parents' house with a bunch of other kids. Now we're always stuck on our phones, and that lack of interpersonal relationships, I think, is contributing largely to these crazy loner cowards that decide to take out their grievances on innocent kids. I think we can all agree that social media, including YouTube, is helping to spread a bunch of anger and these crazy ideas amongst other people, and it's an echo chamber. As I mentioned earlier, if you're crazy and you go on these chat forums and you just start talking with other crazy people, they're going to egg you on, they're going to encourage you into doing these crazy things. You don't have anybody that's sane to tell you, hey, step back and look at what you're thinking about doing. That's insane. You need to check yourself and back up. We're going to come down from the firing position. Something's gone wrong with our rifle. We don't have time to check it out and diagnose the problem and get those jammed up rounds in there. We're going to get this goddamn thing out of the way, and we're going to go to our sidearm and deal with the problem. That f***er's still down the hallway of the school, and he's still shooting at kids. I do not have time to take a knee and fix this rifle. Get to your handgun, solve the problem. Let's try it out. So we almost always see in these situations that these crazy, cowardly assholes have no family to bounce things off of. They have no parents. They almost never have a dad. And in situations even like Uvalde, where they're raised by a grandparent, they don't have any relationship with that grandparent. That kid wouldn't have gone and shot his grandma in the face if the two of them had a talking relationship every single day, and that grandmother was aware of how psychotic this grandson had been. And one of the things that really pisses me off is our news media that keeps using their names and flashing these sexy pictures of these guys off of their Facebook profile. They'll throw these guys out there. They want to go and find out why they did this, so they look for their manifesto. Let's read all, 150 pages of their manifesto. That's psychotic ramblings. Why in the hell would we read those? Law enforcement needs to study them, absolutely. But we don't need to be reading that shit on the internet or on the news. We don't need to put that stuff out there. News media, we got to stop putting these guys' names out there for everyone to hear. It makes the next violent coward think, you know what, I'm tired of people not noticing me. I'm tired of people not hearing me in life, and I'm going to get my name out there. They don't think ahead of time, folks. We've done studies on this, and we find out that they have no concept ahead of time. They don't think about the fact that they're going to spend a lifetime in prison. That's if they're not killed. They don't also think about the fact that they're likely to get killed in this. All they feel is anger at the world, and all they feel is that they want to share that anger and that frustration in life with the rest of the world. So we've got to stop using their names on the news. We've got to stop publishing their names. They need to be known as an angry, violent coward, and we need to really focus on the fact that they're cowards. If we as a culture got together and made these guys known as cowards, if they were always known as cowardly assholes, and every single school shooter, instead of glorifying them, posting their name up on the TV, throwing up their Facebook profile where they're sitting there with their rifle and all their ammunition laid out, if we started calling them what they are, and that's fucking violent, angry cowards, I think maybe we would change the minds of some of these guys who think they're just going to be glorified as long as they get a gun and go out there and shoot up a school. We've got to stop publishing their manifestos, and news media, and including fucking Fox News, we've got to stop using their names. Every psychologist, every police officer that's ever been interviewed says that if we stopped using their names and stopped glorifying these sons of bitches, that we might have fewer of them going out there and trying to get their name on the news next. Come on, we can do better than this shit. And I have a message to the violent, angry cowards out there. If you're thinking about murder, suicide, how about you reverse the order? Why don't you kill yourself first and then worry about the murder part after that? By the way, if you're some future violent, angry coward, you're sitting there in your mom's basement right now thinking about how you're going to get your hands on a gun and what damage you're going to do, how about you put your phone down, get off the goddamn internet, go out there and help somebody, go down and volunteer at the animal shelter, find some purpose in life, find some friends. Even if you can't find friends, I understand, that's kind of tough to do these days with the fucking internet. But if you can't find friends, why don't you go out there and do something good in life? See how it changes you. Try it one day and let me know how it works. At the end of that day, get back to me. If you still feel like going out there and hurting people, well, I'll fucking kill you first. If you're tired of being shunned by girls at your high school because you're some fat fucking slob weirdo who wears a black trench coat and nobody will talk to you, I don't know, how about hit the gym or go get a suntan or some shit? Find a hobby, join a sports, do something to make yourself more attractive to these people, and maybe you won't be such a goddamn loner sitting down there in your mom's basement. That's OG's thought. All right, the next step is mental health. I don't know that much about this stage of things, but these crazy assholes who are committing violence in our schools and our churches are not getting the mental health care that they need. You guys probably don't know, but way back in the 80s, we kind of did away with mental health institutions and all the guys in white uniforms running around with butterfly nets. We started turning people out on the streets, and that's why we've got cities full of homeless people that are crazy. A lot of it's from drugs, but a lot of it's from mental illness, and we're not dealing with that mental illness. Some of these mental ill people, while they're young, are taking firearms and going and doing tragic things at schools. So we need to be able to address that. And I know one of the disconnects we have right now because of a lot of the HIPAA rules is that if a parent or if a school administrator tries to turn in a kid for being crazy, oftentimes, when we're lucky, they're getting taken to a psychologist who a lot of times their hands are tied. They can't talk to law enforcement about it. They can't talk to school administrators about it. They sometimes can't even talk to family members about it. They can't even talk to the very parents who brought them to the psychologist's office about the crazy son of a bitch that they're sitting there talking about their plans in their office. Now, if someone's planning a crime or some kind of an evil act, obviously the HIPAA rules have exceptions for that. But a lot of our mental health professionals are very, very scared of lawyers and scared of being sued. And so they're not going to report like they should. So a lot of our crazy, violent cowards are not getting the mental health care that they need early on. We also have just a lack of it in this country. We don't have enough mental health care, and we don't have the mechanism out there to take these crazy sons of bitches when we identify them, when they're spotted on the internet, when they're spotted at schools. School administrators are also pretty cowardly about turning those kids over to mental health. They don't want to be sued. They don't want to be accused by parents. Parents are scared about turning their kids over to mental health. They don't want the hassle of having a crazy kid under the roof that needs special medication and needs special treatment. So it's a system that has completely failed. We've got to get more mental health out there when we identify these crazy people. So I think we can all agree on that. The mental health system needs to be fixed. Now, part of that mental health component, this is going to be rather unpopular. We've talked a lot about red flag laws lately. There's got to be a way to do this and do this right. We all want to have due process, right? So when we're born in the United States, from the second we're born, we're all afforded the exact same constitutional rights. If you are allowed to own a gun, you're allowed to own a gun in the United States. We have to find a way somehow, and I know red flags are a very unpopular topic. We don't want there to be schools or politicians or even police officers. We don't want family members to be able to ring up someone at some goddamn government bureau and say, so-and-so's crazy, you need to take his guns. And then the men in the white suits run down there and they take all their guns away, violating the constitutional rights of a person who may not be crazy. Now, there's also levels of crazy. I'm related to a lot of crazy sons of bitches, and a lot of them own firearms still. But they're not violently crazy. We have to have a system in place where crazy people who are violent and should not own weapons or firearms, we all agree. There are people downtown right now, wherever you live, screaming at the fire hydrant right now, fried out on drugs and mental illness. Well, you don't want them to be able to walk in and buy an AR-15, do you? So while we very much agree, you and I, that the Second Amendment affords every one of us the right to own a firearm, we have to get a system in place where we can keep firearms out of the hands of crazy people, and that includes youngsters who might go shoot up a school. So let's do something to get out there and take these things out of the hands of crazy people so that normal people, or somewhat normal people like us, can own them and can do good with them, because we're never going to hurt anybody with our firearms. So there's no reason to take our goddamn guns away. We don't need to take every one of these firearms away from all the good people in the United States. We need to keep them out of the hands of crazy sons of bitches out there in the world. So let's work on those red flag laws, not violate anyone's constitutional rights, but have a system in place where a series of judges and mental health professionals evaluate an individual. And if we all agree, if enough people agree from all different spectrums that this individual should not own a firearm, they are flagged and prevented from owning a firearm. I don't disagree with that, and I really don't think that even my most ardent Second Amendment supporters would disagree with that, right? Now, another solution that's been thrown around out there by Matthew McConaughey and senators from both sides of the aisle in Washington, D.C., is limiting firearms purchases to people who are under 21 years old. Now, studies have shown, they've got stats out there, I don't have them in front of me to recite them to you, but people don't fully mature until the age of 29 years old, typically. Most males and females don't mature until 29 years old. And I'm not for necessarily preventing people from owning firearms when they're 18. You're able to serve in the military, smoke cigarettes, and go to prison, then I think you should be able to own a firearm when you're 18. Of course, I deal with kids in 4-H all the way from 9 years old up to 18 years old. They have firearms in their hand every single weekend that we're out shooting because they are owned by parents. Parents buy the gun for the kid. I don't see the problem there. So this is going to be unpopular, but the owning of long guns, the owning of firearms under the age of 21, I absolutely believe that if you're out there serving in our military, that if you are able to go to prison, smoke cigarettes, do everything else that an 18-year-old kid is allowed to do, that you should be able to own firearms. Can you imagine an 18-year-old Marine coming out of boot camp? He's able to operate this firearm expertly, better than I can probably shoot and defend our country. But when he comes home, he's not allowed to own one of these things to defend his own home or his own town. Figure that one out. So I think it's kind of funny that the same people out there who want to allow 16-year-old kids to vote, think about the 16-year-olds you know and how much they know about the world. Should they be voting? Those same politicians that want to allow 16-year-olds to vote want to keep firearms out of the hands of anyone under 21 years old. It's kind of a strange little age restriction they like to play both sides of. So I don't know. I don't know if there's any solution to that, and I don't really know where I stand on that. I'm kind of two minds. So So I'll figure out my own opinion one of these days. Okay, this next topic is going to be kind of unpopular with a lot of the people on my side of the crowd. The gun-owning public out there. A lot of the gun-owning public are all hair on fire right now about how everybody's trying to take our guns. The government's coming to take our guns. They want to take every one of our guns, and it's all of the people on the other side of the aisle. I disagree with them on some of that. I think we need to be cautious. First of all, I don't believe, from a law enforcement perspective, that anybody's ever going to come and take your guns. We as law enforcement can't get ourselves friggin' organized enough to even write cell phone tickets for during a certain period. They're never going to send people door to door to come and collect your guns. This is my belief. Think about this. Whether it was the National Guard or your local police or your state police, whoever you want to put in this dark scenario, the first person who goes up to the rancher in Montana, knocks on his cabin door and says, "I want your guns," how do you think that's going to go? Let's take it the other extreme. The first National Guardsman who goes to the front step of the projects in South Chicago and says, "Time to hand over all your firearms." How do you think that's going to go? I don't believe there's any mechanism for them coming around and taking all of our guns. I don't get my hair on fire about this, and not because I'm a police officer and I'm on the side of the gun takers. Absolutely not. I am as pro Second Amendment, as pro keeping my guns as you are. They're not going to come and get my guns. That I guarantee you. And I don't believe really that anybody is trying to get yours. Now, we have the extremes on both sides. We have the extreme people on the right who believe that everybody out there who's talking about a solution to active killers these days is coming to get my guns. They're coming to take my guns. And then we have the extremes on the left that believe that all guns need to be taken away from every single human on this planet, and that as long as we had all guns taken away, all of this would stop tomorrow morning. I think both sides are a little bit crazy. My side, the gun-owning side, the right side of the aisle, we are gun owners. We are legal gun owners. We own these firearms to protect ourselves. We own these firearms for fun. We own these firearms to train up our kids and our grandkids. We're not about to give up our firearms. They're not going to come and get mine. I'm a police officer. I'm not coming to get yours. Let me tell you, for those of you who are scared that the police, the military, the National Guard are going to come and take your guns away at the order of the government, in my experience, having known a lot of cops for 23 years, I don't believe you're going to find very many cops who are going to want to do that. First of all, it's not in our psyche. We don't believe, most of us, that guns should be taken away from people. Most cops, believe it or not, whether you like it or not, most cops are pro Second Amendment. They believe that the average people should be able to own guns too. Now, a lot of cops believe that you should have that right restricted. I don't happen to agree with them on that. But most cops are pro Second Amendment, and they're not about to come and take your guns.
You sit on a throne of lies.
It's not a feasible thing. It's not a workable thing. They're not going to get people to voluntarily come down and drop all their guns into a big pile, and they're not going to be able to walk around and take physically all of your guns from you. And you can point to countries like Australia or the UK where people have voluntarily turned in most of their firearms. It's not going to happen in the United States. This is our culture, and we have a constitutional right to it. We have a over 200-year history of it. I want to kind of cool the rhetoric on this a little bit. I don't believe that the people on the far left of the aisle, when they say that we need to do something right now to stop these active killers in schools, I actually believe in my heart that these people want to stop the killings. That's their only purpose in life. Now, the way they go about it might be wrong. You and I might disagree with that. I don't believe that every single person that's registered as a Democrat, that's liberal, wants to come around and immediately take away your guns. A lot of them are led to believe that that's the only solution. They're led to believe that by their own politicians and by the media. It's our job to educate them and explain to them why that's not going to solve the problem. You can try and take guns away, but as long as there's one single firearm left in the United States, I'm going to have one to defend myself from the guy who has that. So it's never going to be a 100% gun-free society. Therefore, I'm going to keep mine, and I believe that you should be keeping yours too. So when you hear things on TV, on the news, or read it online about how the majority of Americans want common sense gun legislation, what really the vast majority of people in the center, and I'm not talking about the far crazies on the right, and I'm not talking about the crazies on the left, the people in the center actually just want these killings to stop. And I think we can all agree we want these killings to stop. Now, you and I might agree that taking away our guns and attacking the item, attacking the instrument, is not the way to stop these killings. We know that, right? If you, for some reason, could snap your finger and all firearms would be gone from the United States, tomorrow morning there would be a mass killing with a pitchfork or a knife. We've seen that happen in other countries. We don't want to see any more fourth grade kids dead. It's absolutely unacceptable. And you and I, are the kind of people who will go out there and kill any fucker who wants to try and do this to our kids. Okay, OG, so you've been blathering on a really long time out here in the woods about how we can identify active killers, what makes an active killer, and what we can do to try and stop them or at least prevent them from injuring our youth. But what you're probably more interested in is what you, the OG's Danger Show viewer, can do in your daily life to help stop or identify active killers. So I'm going to give you a couple of tips real quick and see if we can make you a little bit more useful out there on the streets in stopping the next active killer. So first and foremost, you should be carrying a firearm. I think that's probably a given. If you've been watching this show any length of time, you know that I'm a big proponent of every single person who is legally allowed to do so carrying a firearm out there to protect yourself and protect your family. You're far more likely to have to protect yourself from the average street criminal than you are protect a school from an active killer. So if you are armed out there, you are far more able to act and able to do something to help protect your community, your family, and yourself than if you're just standing around with a folding knife in your pocket and unable to react. You might have the right mindset, but do you have the right tools to be able to act to stop any old street crime or any kind of an active killer situation? So when I talk about being armed, I'm actually not talking about rolling around every single day with an AR-15 in your truck. If you can do so where you live, absolutely hoorah, you need to do that. However, this is not practical for everyday purposes. But most of you where you live can carry a pistol. Little Glock 19 here. Big deal. It's not a very spectacular pistol. But this Glock 19 is a good example of what you can roll around with every single day. So if you're out picking up your kids from school, your grandkids from school, if you're out running errands, getting the mail, running into town to grab a carton of milk for your wife, why aren't you armed? I'm more able to step in and protect innocent people or my family or even myself from street criminals or active killers if I'm armed with something like that. So you might ask yourself, oh gee, what can I do in my everyday life to be a little bit more prepared and stop maybe an active killer, since this is what we're talking about on this video? Well, in places like church, a lot of you go to church, and churches are becoming targets of these active killers as well. Do you carry a firearm at church? Seems like a place where you wouldn't have to carry a firearm, and it's also too bad that we do these days. But again, just like schools, this is our new normal. So I encourage you to carry every single place you're legally allowed to do so, and that includes church. Carry a small firearm if your dress for the day on a Sunday doesn't allow you to carry your normal duty-size handgun. Sit in the back of the church so that you're better able to protect the rest of the congregation if some crazy comes in the back door and wants to do damage to all of those people for some crazy reason. If you're way up in the front of the church where my wife likes to sit, you're less likely. You've got a crowd of people, a crowd of innocent victims between you and him, and that crowd of victims is going to be running in a certain direction, and they're likely going to make it very difficult for you to engage him. So make sure you position yourself in a good place, and also come with the right tools. Doesn't matter if it's church or your kid's school. Again, carrying your firearm and knowing how to use it is the number one tool you have out there. You can go out and shoot a paper plate on your fence post all day long, but unless you're actually doing some drills and practicing shooting with your pistol at longer ranges, practice shooting with your pistol through crowds of people. I often run some drills where my bad guy is obscured or hidden behind some innocent people who don't need to be shot. That puts me at a disadvantage. It makes me get into different positions, kneeling, moving left and right, to where I can get a good angle on that bad guy and get some shots off on him without endangering the other people. Picture this: if you ever have to go into your kid's school, or any school for that matter, and there's a shooter inside, do you not plan for the fact that there's going to be 100, 200, 300 kids racing for that front door? You're going to fight your way upstream through a crowd of scared, injured, frantic kids to get to an active shooter. We as police officers train for how to get through this crowd. You're going to have to do the same thing, charging your way to a shooter through a swarm of very scared and injured kids coming out. So I want you to practice these scenarios and think about what it's going to be like in a real world situation. On my active shooter team, the module that I was responsible for teaching was the breaching section, how to get into a school. Remember, we've talked about hardening schools by locking them down. It also makes it very hard for first responders, even you as a first responder, to get into that school. So you got to think outside the box. Shooting going on inside of a school and I can't get through the little metal gate on the outside by the sidewalk? How about drive your car through that fence and get into that school? How about take a garbage can or anything else and break a window and get into that school? The doors might be locked behind our shooter, but we're going to get into that school and we're going to save lives, and we need to do it with any tool we've got. You might be driving your nice, brand new, shiny Ford F-250 through the front doors of that school, but as soon as your truck is inside that hallway and you're out with your firearm and you're engaging that cowardly asshole son of a bitch, you're saving lives. So get into that school no matter what it takes. I don't care what it takes for you to get in there, but as soon as you can breach those doors, breach that gate, you have now distracted that crazy, angry, cowardly son of a bitch, and he is now worried about you instead of executing innocent people. Do you even have additional tools in your truck, in your vehicle with you, in addition to your firearm? We think only about guns, but how about getting into that school if you didn't have a vehicle that you could drive through the gate? Have you thought about running down to Home Depot or your local hardware store and buying a very inexpensive set of bolt cutters and a pry bar, a crowbar of some sort? Keep those things in your trunk. You can cut through a lot of locks, a lot of fences, pry open a lot of doors, break windows with that thing, rake all the glass out of a window and get yourself inside that school so that you're able to do some good and prevent innocent people from being killed. Very simple tools, very inexpensive and easy to get a hold of. Buy a set, keep them in your trunk. Okay, so in our scenario, you're now inside the school. You've gotten in there. You've done the Lord's work. You've stopped this active shooter. All the kids are still screaming and frantic everywhere. There's injured people everywhere. Have you thought about bringing in a medical kit with you wherever you go? Do you always have a bag with you, a medical kit on you? If there's people laying on the ground in this hallway that have been injured with gunfire, you're going to need to stop some bleeding. And you're going to need to, first of all, know how to do it. Just buying first aid and a medical kit is not going to be enough. You need to know how to employ that equipment to help these kids. Your job is not just to stop the shooter, but your job is then to help save lives until emergency medical personnel can get there. And remember, the way almost all emergency medical systems are set up in the United States, ambulance, fire department, and paramedics are not getting into that school to treat injured people until police have gotten through that school and cleared it to make sure there's no more shooters. Think about how long that's going to take. It's going to take a damn long time. So you inside with medical equipment is just as important as you inside with a firearm. So one of the things we don't often think about when we envision ourselves as racing in and being the hero of the day and stopping an active shooter in a school or a church or a business is the fact that police are going to be called and told that there's a man with a gun shooting the place up. When they get there, they're going to find you dressed in civilian clothes carrying a gun. So you need to be very, 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 very aware of the fact that once you have stopped an active shooter, you need to get rid of that goddamn gun. It doesn't matter if you need to set it down and put your foot on it. It doesn't matter if you need to reholster it. You need to get rid of that gun so that when police come through that door, you are not the armed man standing there searching classrooms in your shorts and flip-flops with a firearm in your hand. What's that going to look like to them? Keep in mind that as first responders arrive, you need to get rid of that gun and make sure that you are 100% safe and innocent to first responders. Stand around, give them a great statement about what happened, and maybe they'll give you a pat on the back or a good plaque afterwards. And then speaking about that, it kind of reminded myself about apparel. Are you running around every single day with flip-flops on in the hot summer weather, shorts and flip-flops like a lot of us do? Remember that whenever there's an active shooter, there's going to be a lot of broken glass around, not only from the shooter, maybe from you returning fire, but there's going to be just a lot of broken windows and doors. And remember that you might even be breaking some of those windows and doors to get into a school or a church to stop that shooter. How effective are you with flip-flops? Leave the flip-flops at home for when you're laying around by the pool. Invest in some decent shoes so that you can actively move around and help save people. All right, so I've been blathering on long enough. I hope you enjoyed this video. I appreciate you guys stopping by here and listening to me ramble on about my ideas on these active killer situations. There is no easy solution. There's no button we can push. But if we're smart, we can identify these sons of bitches and we can deal with them long before they get their hands on a firearm. We can prevent them getting firearms and getting in and killing our kids. I think we can all agree, no matter where you come from, no matter what your politics are, we can't have any more kids injured. And people who say that naturally want to go to the firearms and take them all away, but that is not a solution. So we need to find some other solutions out there, and I'm all about working with everybody involved to find a solution to stop these killings. I want you guys to stay armed and aware so that you are prepared if something like this was to go down near you. Keep your heads out of your phones. Keep a decent sized firearm on you. Stay aware of what's going on around you, and you are much more likely to be able to stop and intercept something like this should it cook off in front of you than if you're sitting there looking at Snapchat while you're waiting for your kids outside of their school. The rain has stopped. My fire is out. The mosquitoes are now attacking, so it's time for me to wrap up and get out of here. I've been blathering on long enough anyway. I appreciate you guys listening to me. It's one of the few topics that I know just a little bit about, just enough to be dangerous, so I wanted to share my thoughts with you while it's still kind of fresh in my mind. Until next video, OG out.